This idea of lawfare is really nothing new, trying to bog down political opponents in legal cases, even prosecutions, or in trying to utilize election laws and try to spin them against candidates who you might not like or might not support and hope that a couple of them stick. So, election year lawfare is fairly typical, and we're seeing a lot of that locally. And I thought I'd go over some of it because two examples of election year lawfare have to do with our show. So I thought, well, why don't we go through them and let you guys know how we're being woven into these attempts at lawfare. One of them has to do with State Senator Mark Mullet, a moderate Democrat who is, of course, running for governor against Bob Ferguson. How dare he? And one of Bob Ferguson's legal buddies filed an ethics complaint with the Legislative Ethics Board against Mark Mullet. So this is the complaint. The complaint alleges that respondent violated the Ethics Act by commenting on his opponent in the governor's race while appearing on the air while sitting in his legislative office using legislative equipment during the 2024 session. So basically they're saying, hey, he's running for governor. He's also a sitting state senator. And he did a news interview in his office where he's talking crap about Bob Ferguson, and they said that violated legislative ethics. Now, here's where we come in. The interview in question was, in fact, an interview that Senator Mark Mullet did on the Undivided podcast back in February of this year. Respondent appeared on Brandi Kruse's show Undivided on February 28th, 2024. The complete running time of the show is 30 plus minutes. Respondent's portion was about 12 minutes. During the interview, Ms. Kruse asked respondent multiple questions about the initiatives that were currently before the legislature. Respondent discussed the initiatives that would receive legislative hearings and those that would not. They also discussed several bills pending before the legislature. Ms. Kruse asked the respondent, Mark Mullet, several questions about the initiative that would affect the Climate Commitment Act. So you might be wondering, okay, what's the big deal? Senator Mark Mullet came on my show in February during the legislative session from his legislative office, spoke to me as a legislator about the initiatives that were before the legislature. Nothing wrong with that. But one of Bob Fergie's legal buddies, ended up honing in on this particular clip when I asked Mark Mullet, again, here's from our show, about whether he personally, in November, would vote to repeal the CCA.
I have zero confidence that Bob Ferguson will do anything different than what Jay Inslee has done, which is he will just drive up prices as high as possible. And so if that is the case, where if I'm looking at, a chance of Bob Ferguson being governor, I would be extremely uncomfortable with that possibility.
That's it. He didn't say anything about his campaign for governor. And in case you're not familiar, there's a clear distinction. So if you are running a campaign, let's say that you're a state representative and you are, in session, but you're also running a re-election campaign. You can't mix the two. You can't talk about your re-election campaign and use your state office and your state resources to do a news interview talking about your re-election campaign while you're doing an interview as a sitting state representative. And so it's true that you can't kind of mix business and pleasure, business and campaigning like that. But all Mark Mullet did, all he did in answering a question from me about initiatives before the legislature is suggest that if Bob Ferguson were to become governor, he probably would vote to repeal the CCA because he wouldn't trust how Bob Ferguson would handle the CCA. He wouldn't trust Bob Ferguson to fix the CCA and some of the glaring issues with the CCA that result in the higher gas prices. He didn't talk at all about his campaign for governor. But that didn't stop Bob Ferguson from having one of his legal buddies file an ethics complaint anyway. And as I would expect, the ethics complaint was just dismissed. This from the Legislative Ethics Board. Although Mark Mullet mentioned Bob Ferguson in his comments during the show, it appears to be a somewhat ambiguous comment in an otherwise legitimate discussion about initiatives to the legislature and other pending legislation. The question and respondent's response constituted approximately 23 seconds of the 12-plus minute interview that Mark Mullet participated in. Having considered the respondent's comments and all of the circumstances, the board finds that further proceedings would not serve the purpose of the Ethics Act. It is hereby ordered. The complaint is dismissed. What you're basically saying, Bob Ferguson being thin-skinned and having his legal buddies go and find little 23-second clips that he can try to take to the ethics board and, how dare Mark Mullet run against me as a Democrat? Let's find some things to go after him for. What they're arguing in making that complaint, essentially, is that sitting members of the legislature can't criticize another public official. No, Mark Mullet, he's running against him for governor, but he has every right in his legislative capacity to criticize Bob Ferguson, to criticize how he would handle the CCA, to criticize the fact that he wouldn't do anything to help reduce CCA costs for working class families. And that's what the Legislative Board of Ethics found, is that Mark Mullet did nothing wrong. So Mark Mullet won in election year lawfare. Bob Ferguson, 0. Let's move on, shall we? Now to an election year lawfare effort from the right. It is, I'm proud of this, by the way, Dave Reichert's first PDC complaint of his campaign is about me. I take such pride in that. I love it. So this is the complaint filed against Dave Reichert's gubernatorial campaign. Alleged violation of state law for failure to timely and accurately report contributions and expenditures. Let's take a look into this complaint, shall we? It was filed by a man named Eric Crowell. Nice picture of him here. So in this complaint, Eric Crowell, who's a citizen of Washington State, alleges that I spoke at a Dave Reichert event for free and I cannot do that. That if I spoke at a Dave Reichert event, Dave Reichert would have to list it as an in-kind contribution to the PDC. Now, I'm going to talk about that in a moment, but let's dive a little bit more into Eric Crowell, shall we? Let's see here. So Eric Crowell runs a Twitter account called Outrage Pacific Northwest, which I'm blocked on now. So he files his PDC complaints from behind a block screen. Let's see. He also has a shady past. Armed man who filmed Portland police returns to jail because he violated the terms of his pretrial release. Yeah, apparently he was creepily outside a police precinct with a huge cache of weapons, but I digress. You know, it's the only picture of him I had is his booking photo. Oh, he also happens to be a contributor to Semi Bird's campaign. So this PDC report gets filed by Eric Crowell, and then he takes to his Twitter page, not acknowledging that he's the one who filed it, right? And he says, breaking news, the Washington PDC has opened an investigation into these unreported in-kind contributions made to the Reichert campaign by Brandi Kruse. I love how he's like, breaking news on the report you filed with the PDC. And also when you said opened an investigation, that's not really how it works. The PDC gets complaints, the complaints go up on their website, and then they look into whether the complaints are valid. So I could file a complaint today saying Bob Ferguson is actually a space alien in disguise here to destroy the planet, and the PDC would have to open an investigation into my complaint. So it's just sort of a matter of course. Now let's get to the actual meat of this PDC complaint. So it all centers around this idea that because I sometimes do keynote speeches and charge people to do keynote speeches, that I can't simply decide to speak at Dave Reichert events for free. So the gist of this complaint is that the PDC should be able to regulate and put a monetary value on my free speech, which is just inherently stupid on its face and unconstitutional. But Eric Crowell points to this tweet that I sent out, and this is the only tweet that he includes in his PDC complaint. It's taken out of context. I'll give you the full context coming up in a moment. But here's the tweet he included a screen grab of in his complaint. Yes, actually, I did speak at a Dave Reichert event for free, but keep making things up. If I didn't speak for free, he would have had to list it in his PDC filings. So Eric Crowell took that tweet and in his PDC complaint takes it completely out of context, saying that Brandi is admitting here that she spoke at a Dave Reichert event for free so he could avoid listing her contribution with the PDC. Which isn't what I'm saying at all. If you look at the actual in-context tweets in terms of what I'm replying to, I was replying to a series of tweets where people were accusing me. There was a guy on Twitter called Purple Dog accusing me of being paid by the Reichert camp to support his campaign. She's paid by Reichert and Future 42 to do this. He says, you don't speak at Dave Reichert events for free. So I responded and said, yes, actually, I do speak at Dave Reichert events for free. Totally supporting him for free. And the point I'm making is if I didn't do it for free, you would see it listed in the PDC. If I charged Dave Reichert to speak at his event, he would have to file that with the PDC. So that's the point I'm making here. It's not that I spoke for free to hide it from the PDC. No, I spoke for free because I can speak for free whenever I want, to whomever I want, for whatever reason I want. That's my First Amendment right. And you certainly can't, the PDC or any government entity can't tell me who I can speak to for free for. That's absolutely absurd. I would also point out, and this will be part of the PDC investigation process, I'm sure they'll reach out to me about it, even though it should just be dismissed on its face, because again, they can't tell me that I can't exercise my First Amendment rights for free to whomever I want. I speak at an awful lot of events for free. One of the things that Eric Crowell said in his complaint is Brandi usually charges $2,500 for keynote speeches, and he provides some records that of organizations I've spoke for, like to Republican Party groups, where I charge them $2,500. Yeah, that's because if I don't have a personal connection to a group and they want me to spend time on my schedule, putting a speech together, coming to an event, yeah, I'm going to charge them to give a keynote speech. But I will say I do free events as much as, or if not more than I do paid events. So, I mean, I have a long list of events that I have done this year for free that I don't charge. I really never charge for emceeing events, only for keynote speeches. I mean, Nicole, I'm just trying to think of a few I did. I did Roanoke this year for free. I did the Seattle Police Foundation for free. I did this Snohomish County canine auction for free. I have an event for free coming up on Wednesday, an event for free coming up on Saturday. I just booked an event for September for free. So yeah, I get to decide whether I want to charge someone to come speak to them or whether I want to do it for free because I believe in what they're doing. And I will continue to speak at Dave Reichert events for free. I will continue to introduce Dave Reichert at fundraising events for free. I will continue, if he'd like to MC Dave Reichert events, for free. And the PDC absolutely cannot regulate the monetary value of my words. But just an example of local election year warfare where you can't beat people on the issues, can't beat people on the merits of your ideas. So you've got to go in and try to get them all buried in legal mumbo jumbo as a distraction. And it's really quite sad.